great if, as people age and it's frankly not all that safe to let them out loose on the road, I think that would be one of the first really legitimate uses of the absolutely full self-driving cars. So I'm absolutely in favor of it.
In your argument there, Jim, you had some oughts that I don't know that I would just naturally agree with. The first one being that, like, what we ought to do with the money that we're saving, right?
Ooh, I mean, the worst case is really, really bad. The next step is called artificial superintelligence, which is something that's...
I'm Chris Houseworth, a grain originator and accountant living in Pocahontas, Iowa, and you are listening to the Vance Crow Podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm glad you're here. Today, Jim Rutt returns. We're going to sit down and talk about artificial intelligence. We'll start off just talking about the very basics, and then we're going to move into a more advanced conversation about what are the risks. If you are a longtime listener to the podcast, you know that Jim has an extensive history in tech, in large corporations, and if you listen to his podcast, you even know that one time he presented an idea to the Department of Defense about how you could take down the national grid, and they were like, whoa, yeah, don't tell anybody else about that. So Jim has an interesting mind. He has amazing guests, and it is a true pleasure to have him on. We're going to get to that interview in just a moment. But first, I want to talk a little bit about legacy interviews. Just this week, we were called up by a family in New York City that said, we want you to come to our apartment here and sit down and record my father telling his life stories and some of his friends and family members so that we can record everybody's memories of him. And so that's what we're doing. One of the things that we've worked on this year is traveling occasionally to do legacy interviews. So if you're interested in having us sit down with your loved ones, maybe to do it as an entire family experience or extended family experience, go ahead and check out the Legacy Interviews website and then contact us to figure out how to plan your unique event, even if that means we need to come to you. So go to legacyinterviews.com to find out more. All right, without further ado, let's head to my good friend, Jim Rutt. Jim Rutt, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be back.
Well, my friend, much has changed since we sat down and talked. You know, we first started getting in touch during COVID, and we've had a lot of conversation about the alternative groups that we've made and kind of how do you think about a world that advances in technology, but people have to have some kind of basis, some kind of basic, how do we relate to one another? And I'm really excited to talk with you about artificial intelligence to try and get an idea of what it is and really, like, what are the threats here? So to begin, when people are talking about AI, how should they understand this? Computers that think like human beings?
Not fully, certainly not the full stack. I think the way you start is think about computers that can do things that were previously thought to be human things to do, right? Like, for instance, spell check is even kind of a low-end AI, right? It used to be human, go look it up in the dictionary. Now you just have your little thingy that's in your Chrome browser do it for you. So that's very low-end AI, but I'd say it's AI nonetheless. So that's the easiest way to do it. If it's something a human used to do and now a computer does it, and it has some amount of smarts in it, it's not just, typing letters into things, you can call it AI, and from very, very weak up to eventually very, very strong.
What do you mean by that, weak versus strong?
This is a key distinction, and a lot of the conversations about AI kind of get this all muddled together. Weak AI is something like a spell checker. Then there's narrow AI, which is something that is reasonably impressive, but operates in a thin domain. The classic example in the history of AI were game-playing programs. There was a checkers program that was damn good by the mid-'60s, and then famously in the '90s, Deep Blue, IBM's chess computer, beat Kasparov. Was it Kasparov? I think it was, or was it the other dude? One of the top.
I don't remember. Yeah, it was one of them. Yeah,
one of them good Ruski players at the time was the world's champ and beat him in a tournament. And a lot of people were crestfallen. Then it's gone on to other programs. You can now get a program on your phone that will beat the world's champion, pretty much. And then Go was another game that was thought, that'll be at least 30 years for the narrow AIs can solve that. Well, that was solved, several years ago. And so those are narrow, meaning that it's a thing that humans can do at the very highest level of human capacity, and AIs can do it and can now do it better than humans, but they can't do anything else. Like you could take Deep Blue, beat the world's champion in chess, but tell it to play backgammon, it wouldn't even know where to start, right?
And the way that narrow AI is working, at least in chess, is you make a move and it says, all right, out of all the possibility space of all the moves that I can make, the one that's the highest probability to lead me to success is X, or is it more complicated than this?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, that is it at the 1,000,000-foot level, but lots going on underneath that. Because even chess, it can't look all the way ahead. There's just too many possible branches, so it has to use estimators, positional estimators, to say, all right, if I do this, 4 branches ahead, how good is that by some estimating algorithm, which it has to train over time, et cetera. Because otherwise it could never do it. And that turned out to be really important in Go, because Go has far more branches than chess. Go is to chess as chess is to checkers, approximately, right? And so it has to use a lot more of this estimating what branches look good. And it doesn't really know, quote unquote, but yeah, that it has to add a lot of that into the thing. And interestingly, the thing that beat the champion in Go was what's called self-trained. They just gave it the rules of Go and not much more than that, and told it to play itself like 100 million times. And just from that, it figured it out. They did not put any, dictionaries of opening moves or anything like that. Quite remarkable. They then used that same technology to try to learn chess from the beginning, and within a few hours, it was better than most players, and within a couple of days, it was better than world champions, and in a couple of days after that, it was right up there with the very best chess software. Again, no databases, no history of games, just play yourself and figure it out. Quite remarkable. But again, very narrow, because even Go, which is played on a 19 by 19 square board, if you were to change the board size, which people do as an experiment, change it to 11 by 11, couldn't play for shit, right? You have to, you would have to retrain it basically on that, because it is, just really, really, really deep knowledge of the pattern, essentially. So that's narrow AI. And then you have broader AIs, and this is where we are today, things like large language models that can do a lot of things in the domain of language. But again, they can't drive a car. They can't pass the Wozniak test for general AI. Maybe we'll pause a second, and then we'll come back talk about the Wozniak test, which I personally love a lot for how you get to a general AI. So we have broader AIs now starting to widen out. ChatGPT is the one that your listeners may be familiar with. If you're not, check it out. Just type in ChatGPT into Google, go wherever the heck it tells you to go, and sign up. It's free, and it's an amazing tool. It knows almost everything, and it can answer questions. You can iterate multiple times on the question. It probably knows who Vance Crowe is, and can tell you what color underwear he wears. No, probably not that one, but it's amazing what it knows and how good it is. On the other hand, if you follow the news, famously, it just makes stuff up also. If it's at the fringe, it will, at the fringe of what it knows, if it doesn't know it all, it'll say, I don't know. But if it's at the fringe where it thinks it might know, it'll just make something up. It's quite funny. Like I am
Well, and it's incapable of distinguishing whether it's making something up right now, right? Because it's just finding out what do most people think the next word should go here, and so if it's giving you an answer, it's because it thinks, oh, this is what the path has led me to. It's not like you could ask it, do you know you're lying to me?
Yeah. Though it does turn out to be interesting. You can ask it its confidence level, and it will then give you something, and that signal is actually worthwhile. It's kind of curious. And that's a good point, though, that what it's actually doing is just predicting the next word in the sequence. And the fact that it does so amazingly well, still nobody knows quite how or why. It's really kind of cool.
And so then strong AI, as you think about ChatGPT, like I used it. I use Grok now on Twitters all the time. But what's next? Because that definitely has limitations. This is not something I'm scared of at all. At first, you're like, whoa, this can write news stories. This can do all kinds of good stuff. But you start seeing the flaws. You start trying to use it for things, and you realize, like, this thing can fall off the tracks real fast. So what's the next evolution of this? What's ChatGPT 5 going to be like?
Yeah, before we go there, let me tell you one other thing, though. Even with ChatGPT 4, if you wrap software around it, you can do a lot more things with it. For instance, over the last 12 months, I sort of accidentally started a company to use ChatGPT behind the scenes from a program to write movie screenplays. And it's got levels upon levels of processing in it, where it'll send stuff to GPT and then it'll bring it back, it'll structure it and reorder it, and then it'll send some more stuff, and then makes the human interact with it. And the end result, surprisingly, is you can knock out something that's about as good as a first draft, semi-professional, mid-grade, semi-pro screenwriter in about 20 hours, as opposed to something like 500 hours that it would take an actual human to do that. And we figured out sort of how to tame all that wildness and focus it on a domain in a pretty impressive fashion. But on the other hand, you can't get it to drive a car or the Wozniak test. So here's where we'll talk about the next step, which is probably beyond ChatGPT 5. And this is what's called general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, often abbreviated AGI. And that is computer software and hardware that can do anything a human can do, or most things that a human can do, about as well, at least as well as a human. And we're not even close to that at this point, though there are some experts that think we're within 5 years of it. I have my doubts about that, but I mean, there are some very reputable people I know that will say could be in 5 years. And so this is where I now talk about the Wozniak test. The co-founder of Apple, the not so famous one, Steve Wozniak, years ago came up with this test for AGI, which is to plunk a robot powered by an artificial general intelligence down in any random American kitchen and tell it to make coffee. There's a whole bunch of things it has to figure out from that are kind of human kind of things. Now, where would they might put the coffee? What about the coffee maker? There's different kinds of coffee makers. And so sort of going around in a rando kitchen and figuring out all the little things it needs to do. Where's the water? Where's the electric plug and all that is an example of the kind of thing that an AGI could do, but today's software isn't even close to doing. Now, to give you a sort of a halfway point, and it's one that's, of course, turned out to be way harder than people thought a few years ago, is a true self-driving car. I was following this since about 2016, and by 2019, the big car companies were at least whispering that they're going to have full self-driving automation by 2021, where you could literally drive anywhere with the artificial intelligence driving for you. Well, it turns out it's a lot harder than they thought. We do have some self-driving cars in San Francisco and in Phoenix area that can drive themselves without any driver, but only in a narrowly circumscribed geographic area where they have super seriously mapped every corner, everything. And the idea of the full general artificial driving machine is still, we don't know.
I don't know, man. I've been in a Tesla up in the country and had it drive from a farmhouse all the way to a restaurant about 20 miles away. And it passed around a tractor on its own. It passed by other cars. It made, left-hand turns. And, it was pretty amazing.
It's getting there. And I had George Hotz on a show recently. He has a company, believe it or not, that has an open source self-driving software where you buy $1,000 box from him, put it behind your rear view mirror, hook it into all the electronics of your car, which amazingly easy, it turns out. And it's a little worse than Tesla, but not much. And you can do it with 250 different models of cars, which is quite remarkable. Almost any Japanese or American car made after 2020 will work with his open source self-driver. And
So this is a good place for us to get your temperature on things. When you think about self-driving cars, is this something that you're jumping up and down about, or are you like, you'll have to pry my 2000 Ford F-150 pickup truck from my cold dead hands because I don't want any electronics in it?
well, it's funny, a little bit of both. It's always good to keep a non-electronics vehicle around in case of EMPs or solar flares or something. On the other hand, I've long said that I'd love to have a car where I could read a book or sleep in the back seat while it drives me around, or heck, go out to dinner instead of having 3 beers, have 12, right?
Well, I think there'll be the commute will include exercise. I think they'll have little cars that people have recombinant bikes or ellipticals or all kinds of things. Rowers, you could sit in there and get your workout in while you're waiting in traffic. Although there'd be a hell of a lot less traffic if everybody was doing AI cars, right?
Well, could be. We can talk about that. As a professionally lazy person, I will not be doing exercise. I can tell you that right now. Probably reading a book or sleeping or something like that. But yeah, some people will. And then wouldn't that be cool? You could have your rowing machine hooked up to a generator and supply some of the electricity.
But you, generally speaking, are like, yeah, it'd be nice to have these things. I'm open to it in culture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll be all in favor of it. And I am not a young person. I just turned 70 last year. And so over time, I had to take the keys away from first my wife's mother, then my father, then my mother, right? And, those were fairly traumatic confrontations, as you could probably imagine. And it would be great if, as people age, and it's frankly not all that safe to let them out loose on the road, and that will come to most people before they die. If they could just get in their car and tell their car where to take them, that would be great. I think that would be one of the first really legitimate uses of the absolutely full self-driving car. Cool. So I'm absolutely in favor of it. Don't have any romantic attachment to driving, though I do enjoy driving. And my main driver is a 2017 Jeep Grand Cherokee with a hunkin' heavy V8 in it, so which I do enjoy driving. But I will buy a true no hands, no eyes, sleep in the back seat, self-driving car once I'm convinced that they are indeed safer than I would be likely to be.
Well, you mentioned about how far away the artificial intelligence is. I heard Ray Kurzweil talking about his prediction has been and still is 2029 to hit that singularity point where, the speed with which the AI is learning and is fully autonomous is really just, like you had said, 5 years away. You said you have your doubts about this.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I will say that I have actually growing amount of agnosticism about how long this is going to take. If you run some brute force measures of the sort Kurzweil does, you can get to 2029. On the other hand, when you look how long it's taken for them to get even up to just sort of okay self-driving cars like the Tesla autopilot, whatever the hell they call it, 5 more years. That was 5 years, 2019 to 2024. They make considerable progress, but nothing close to passing the Wozniak test. So if someone made me put a bet down on a computer pass the Wozniak test in 2029, I'd bet against it. On the other hand, I know some mighty smart people that say yes. I would say that my own over-under would be at least 10 years and maybe more. Could be 20 in that range, 10 to 20.
Well, a robot is an interesting addition when you're thinking about AI, because not only do you then have to have a computer that can think through what are the steps. First I need to locate the coffee maker, check all the countertops, now check the lower ones, trying to do this by deduction, but to then also add in balance and its ability to reach and its ability to move. To me, there's something separate about that. That's like AGI plus robotics.
I think robotics are almost there to do that. If you had enough money, if you had, $250,000 to do it, it wouldn't be something you could actually use. But we're getting closer on the robotics side. Okay, let's make the test purer rather than an actual robot. Let's have a human emulating a robot with the AGI just reading out the instructions. Okay, Jim, step forward 3 steps, raise your right hand, extend it straight out, right? I would even accept that as a surrogate for the Wozniak test, and I don't think it'll be able to pass it in 2029, probably, but I would not bet a lot of money on it, right? I bet a month's rent, but not a mortgage on it, right? Or a house price on it. So I do think that as a matter of social policy and how we think about change, we have to keep in mind that this is a collection of trajectories which we can't know which one it will actually be, which makes the problem somewhat harder. What happens if it's in 3 years? Oh dear. What happens if it's in 50 years? Well, that's a very different set of issues we have to deal with at different pacing. And so we have kind of what we call a meta problem of trying to figure out which one of these trajectories is the one where we should put much of our social attention and our bets and things of that sort. So that's one of the things I would encourage your audience to do is when people give a hard date, be skeptical. Kurzweil, smart guy. I know Ray Kurzweil. But I would not necessarily say he's right. And other people say 3 years, other people say 50 years. So realize that there's considerable uncertainty even amongst the experts.
So what happened that we went from AI being something in science fiction books to, this ChatGPT coming out and everybody being like, whoa, and then this huge wave, then you went on to having Midjourney, and you have Dolly, and you have now Gemini. What happened that all of these came, the tech tree, happened to everybody at the exact same time? What happened there?
Well, actually, it's a tiny little piece of the tech tree. All those things use the same technology, basically, which is called deep learning, which is a kind of neural net. Your brain is made with neurons, which are like little branching thingies that connect to each other, and they fire. When this one fires, the next one fires, and if these 3 fire and they're downstream to this one will fire, etc. And there's a very simplified version of the kind of structure we use in our brains called artificial neural nets. And they've been around since the late 50s, believe it or not. And they've just been gradually getting a little better. But in the 2010 time frame, 2011, 2012, 2010, 2011, that time frame, somebody figured out that you could run these things on the video cards that are used to play high-end games. And further, there's one particular algorithm where all the computation is. It's called gradient descent. And somebody figured out how to modify gradient descent just a little bit so that it would run reasonably efficiently on these game cards. And without that change, we would not have seen any of the things that you just mentioned. It would take too much computation to be able to actually run it in the computer chips themselves. It would cost maybe 100 times more than it's currently costing to do something. So nobody would have even tried it. It probably cost $60 to $100 million to build ChatGPT-4 for just the computer time to build that sucker. Multiply that by 100, you'd be at $6 billion. Nobody would have spent $6 billion on a one-shot test to try out, could I build ChatGPT? Pretty big bet to do it for $60 million, but for $6 billion, I don't think anyone would have probably done it. So anyway, it's one technology, neural nets, one version of neural nets called deep learning, and then one technical trick, which is to get one algorithm, gradient descent, to run on graphics cards. Now, of course, they're building big old things that are basically just huge computer vision graphics cards. NVIDIA is the company. Guess what? It's the same NVIDIA that makes the video cards for all the high-end game machines. Their business now is mostly building big, giant versions of these GPUs, as they're called. And guess what? GPU stands for graphic processing unit. Even though they're not being used for graphics mostly, they're the same identical architecture as the video cards, which is quite remarkable. And so that is the line of descent, which has led us to large language models. Oh, then one other thing. There was an algorithmic trick developed by Google with a program called BERT, B-E-R-T, that uses transformers, which is a specific kind of deep neural net, to process sequential data like language. And so this is not all of AI. That's something that's starting to drive me nuts. There's a lot of journalists talk as if large language models and other forms of generative AI, I tend to use generative AI to include things like DALL-E and Midjourney and Claude 3, which is actually very good, by the way. Claude 3 is right up.
And for people that don't know what you're describing when you're talking about DALL-E and Midjourney, this is where you can go and you can type in a prompt that says, make a realistic photo of a teddy bear being held up by balloons. And it will generate these based on just your words, but there's an image that's created out of it. It's actually rather surreal. We can go into my kind of complaints about this in a little bit, but just the fact that you can type in words, dog, teddy bear, balloons, and it can bring this back. But it's not that it's going and finding you a photograph of those things. It is that it is actually creating an image that looks like a photograph that's so astounding.
Yep. And again, if you don't want to photograph it, do it cartoon style. It'll do that, right?
And so those are still LLMs, that kind of...
Basically the same technology. They're transformer technologies underneath. It's all the same closely related family trees. And then, of course, there's also now ones that will do videos. Runway is currently the one that's furthest along that's available to the public. But OpenAI has shown Sora that looks like it can probably do a minute or two of video from text, and you can do it like a screen. You could say, okay, I want a cottontail rabbit, being chased by a coyote or something, and then have the rabbit go off the cliff and the coyote go off the cliff. And I guess it should be a roadrunner, actually, shouldn't it? Not a cottontail rabbit. And it'll, do something halfway reasonable. And when you get to like 90 seconds, you're pretty close to being able to stitch together a feature-length film, or at least a 45-minute TV show, because those things are broken up into, 1 to 3 minute chunks, basically. And so the ability to create a TV show or a movie from text is getting, it won't be this year or next year, but it might be 2 or 3 years out, which will be quite remarkable. And all those use the same family tree of deep neural nets, GPUs, transformers, etc. So this is one pass through the technology stack, which has become super optimized because, of course, once you found you could do cool things with it, gigantic amounts of money have flowed in, and more cool stuff is being built, and algorithms are being improved, hardware is being improved. There was a huge announcement from NVIDIA yesterday about its next generation architecture, which I call not just an architecture, but a meta architecture, because the architecture will also help their suppliers get better at creating the chips, and will help their users get better at building advanced data centers for deploying their GPUs. So, whoa, this thing is kind of a big announcement that came out yesterday from NVIDIA. So, yeah, a lot going on, but it's one pass. And this is also something to keep in mind. We're going to have some other surprises, because there are other trees of AI that are not deep learning, don't use GPUs, etc. And they could come up with some remarkable things too, and we just don't know when. And now it is, I would say, a little bit unfortunate that so much of the money and talent has been pulled into generative AI, deep learning, transformer architectures, but there's still fair bits going into other kinds of systems as well.
And so when you talk about this other tech stack, if we're not to understand large language models or this, what is the other type of AI? What else can it do, or how does it work?
Historically, one of the ways you could divide AI up since 1956, when it started at Dartmouth University, a summer program where a bunch of super smart people got together and spent 3 months at Dartmouth. Now, it's pretty funny. These are some very famous, smart people, and they estimated they'd be at human-level AI within 6 months. This was 1956. Oops. Anyway, but at least they got the ball rolling. So until the, say, into the 2000s, the leading form of AI was called symbolic AI. that kind of look like computer programs, statements about the world. And you'd have knowledge engineers that would help you build a set of statements that teach you how to make a pizza or something, and use that to control a robot for throwing some dough in the air and catching it on the robot's finger and twirling it and making some pizza dough. There's still, and so symbolic AI is one branch, and a connectionist AI is the other branch. Connectionist meaning things connected together, kind of like the brain. And there's still work going on in symbolic, and particularly there's really interesting work going at the intersection between connectionist and symbolic. In fact, a project I advise from time to time called OpenCog is definitely a player in that domain. They have a big network of computers all over the world running their software called Singularity Net, and that's a good example. Gary Marcus is another researcher who continues to do work there, and even Jeffrey Hinton, the guy who developed deep learning, he says it's not. He doesn't believe it's enough by itself to get to artificial general intelligence, and we'll have to get more symbolic representations. To give an example, you mentioned how these things hallucinate. The reason they hallucinate is they don't actually know anything. They're just a bunch of patterns. They pattern match, and they say, whatever. The capital of France is Rome. Well, they don't actually know it. A symbolic system would actually have a representation in a symbolic form. Capital of Paris, France equals Paris, right? So it would never make a mistake. And if you could combine the generality and ease of learning of the connectionist architecture with the ability to be precise and to actually reason about what it knows better in the symbolic systems, you may well have synergy, what we call in OpenCog, cognitive synergy, where you combine the strengths of the connectionist, the neural kind of stuff, with the strengths and the precision and the speed of the symbolic. That may actually be the golden road to artificial general intelligence. Now, should I add the scary next step?
Well, before we get to the next step, with people pouring money into this, you said, hey, before, if you dumped $6 billion into a single shot, it wouldn't be worth it. But now there's millions, billions of dollars flooding into AI. What are they hoping comes out of this? What do they want it for, and what will it be capable of doing in the utopian vision?
Well, of course, they means lots of different things. And this is really important, especially for young people thinking about their careers. I've intentionally not been involved in starting companies for 20 years, more or less doing other kinds of stuff. But this stuff was so exciting when I fell into it in November 2022. I said, I got to take a little test run here and see if I can build something. And it turned out we could, which was kind of cool. But what it reminded me of was PCs in 1977. People say, it's the next internet. And I go, nope, bigger than the internet. It's the next smartphone. And I go, nope, bigger than the smartphone. Because if you take a look at a smartphone, it's just a tiny little PC, really. Took a look at the internet, it's just a really big local area network. And we had local area networks for PCs by 1980. So I say that the root of, desktop computers, smartphones, internet, it's all with the PC in 1977. And we had no idea what the PCs would really be good for. It wasn't till a year or two later, somebody came up with the idea of word processing, right? In 1977, people wrote their business letters on yellow pads, gave them to their secretaries who'd type them out, give them back to them, and they'd correct it. My very first, managerial job in 1980, amazingly enough, I still had a secretary who wanted me to write my crap out on yellow pads. I stopped pretty quickly, started using programming editors to do my writing, but only soon thereafter did real professional grade word processors come up. The spreadsheet, something we all live with today. I remember the first PC spreadsheet would have been about 1981. I bought it in a computer store. It was with 81. Yeah, it would have been 81. It was a copy of VisiCalc, the first real spreadsheet, in a Ziploc bag with a hand-printed label on it. And I took it home and I was like amazed. I stayed up all night long, just building. Whoa. Today you can't think of anything more boring and cliched than Excel. But in 1981, the spreadsheet was, who came up with this idea? This is like so brilliant. And we're at that stage right now with these large language models and the other generative AI, is that people are just constantly coming up with new things you can do with them. Every day somebody comes up with something cool you can do with them. Who would have thought writing movie screenplays would be a thing you could do with today's technology? But you can. And some of the areas where they're being relatively rapidly deployed is in customer service applications, in medical diagnostics, in repair helpers for things like auto repair, aircraft repair, industrial repair, etc. Programming, computer programmers. When I wrote this huge program, I never could have got it done without using the LLMs to actually write the code. I would say I was 3 times as productive as I would have been without it. And I probably would have thrown in the towel long before I got done with it if I didn't have my trusty helper. And of course, talk to any college professor. They'll tell you all the students are using these things for writing their essays. And so everyone is out here exploring, what in the world is this thing really good for? And what is it not good for? It's not yet really a perfect replacement for search, but it is a pretty good kind of thinking companion. Give you an example. When the first day I fired up ChatGPT in November 2022, I said, let me do a homework assignment that I had in 12th grade honors English. And I had it compare and contrast Melville's Billy Budd with Conrad's, I don't remember, Lord Jim. Yeah, that's what it was. And the thing 45 seconds later, kicked it out, said, Mrs. Carr would have given this about a B+, right? In honors English, 12th grade. And that was GPT 3.5. So that was like, whoa, this stuff's pretty good. So we are, just like we did with the PCs, which at first people didn't know what the heck they would be good for. We're exploring what these things are good for. We'll give you an example of something that DALL-E is amazing at. You need a logo for your business? Just sit down with DALL-E, which is now part of GPT-4 Plus, $20 a month, all you can eat, and just type in ideas and ask it to create logos for your business. And it will produce a surprisingly good one in maybe 5 or 6 rounds of you going back and forth. Because each one you get, you can critique it. Oh, I don't like that. I want a picture of somebody impaled on a pitchfork or something as part of my logo, right? And I want them to have a red beard, right? Then I'll do it again with the red beard. And so, who would have thought it would be good for logos? But it's really good for logos. And
But I mean, on the flip side, my experience has been, I thought, okay, I write a lot of speeches. Sometimes I need to have images in there. It'd be really nice if I could just have it create an image. So one time I went to it and said, give me a man on a box. Because I wanted to show this guy that came into town that was, standing on a box to tell a story. And it would do a man on a giant box and people all around him look like ants. Then you'd put him on a different one. Now he's under the box. Now he's on the side of the box. In some ways, it almost feels cursed because it can never quite get it right.
Yeah, it is interesting. And you have to sort of know, after a while, you get a sense of what's reasonable to ask it to do and what's not. And I don't know, I can't really explain it, but I now have a fairly good sense. Now, I also have a fairly good sense of when to use DALL-E and when to use Midjourney. If you want something that really looks artistic, like artistic photography or something, or artistic painting, Midjourney is your best bet. But if you want something that's more literal in terms of doing what you say, then DALL-E 3 is, I find, to be a better bet. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you have to go back and forth and say, no, not that. Try that again, right? Just like if you've ever worked with a professional graphic artist to create something for, a business presentation, a lot of back and forth. The first draft, very seldom what you want. Though it is true.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's good for people that aren't actually using it. Like, I work with both graphic designers and I've tried AI. And with the AI, it's like, the more I try and squeeze the bunny, the more it starts squeezing out. It's like it just doesn't quite work. Whereas with the graphic designer, I can be like, all right, let's start over. But we're not really starting over because they have
and they know more.
context
Yeah,
and
they track what you want. It is easier. On the other hand, good graphic artists cost $125 an hour, and DALL-E and GPT Plus costs $20 a month. So that matters too, particularly for very small businesses and such. But try it out on logos. That's a sweet spot for it. Trust me on this, that you can create a really cool logo that even a graphic artist might not be able to do as good in 20 minutes for a lot of things.
So, you mentioned before talking about the dark sides of AI. I'm very interested in this. And I think for many people, the starting point of the dark point of AI is, you're right. There used to be a person that was charging $125 an hour for a skill that they have developed. And now you've got a computer that can do this infinitely. So this seems very scary to people that had creative work, that have developed skills. Is this where you think the darkness comes? Are you worried about people's jobs being taken from them and not having a replacement because the work's all done by AI?
Certainly that is one of several risks that I'm concerned about. But it's also, of course, opportunity. Because, for instance, if the leading edge graphic artist will say, all right, let me convert my practice to being enhanced with the tool, and I'll now be able to knock off 3 times as many images as I used to. I just finished a project with a graphic studio that was doing the designs for our website for our new product and our logos and our investor deck and all this sort of stuff. And these are, long-time professional marketing agency. And they were very upfront that they use these AI generative tools for almost everything. And the amount of work that they could crank out was amazing, how quickly they could do it and how cost effectively. So yes, just like I remember when desktop publishing came out in the 80s, every town used to have a printing company. Any town of 10,000 or more had a little printing company because printing was a pain in the ass, right? You had to set up the plates and, It was like very hardware intensive and very skill intensive. And then, by the end of the 80s, it was lay it out in PostScript and then fire it to the equivalent of a big laser printer. And I think it was 30,000 print companies went out of business between 1982 and 1997. It's a ridiculous number like that. But there's still print companies around, but they now all use the technology. And of course, a lot of people just do it themselves. And so the same thing will happen in these graphic art domains. Those who embrace the technology will become more productive, probably more successful than ever. Some percentage of people will go to do it yourself. The number of people who are professional graphic artists will probably go down. And the total amount of dollars spent on graphic art will probably go down because you'll be getting 3 times as much from the professionals, and some of the lower end tasks will be done on a do-it-yourself basis. So that will certainly impact some jobs. Now, the question is, we don't know the answer to this. Will more jobs be created or destroyed? That is, I think, still an unclear question because we now have whole new industries. We now need prompt engineers, for instance, because it turns out if you really want to do serious things with this, your ability to ask the questions and type in the stuff yourself, like for instance with your graphic art, if you had a prompt engineer working with you, they would do a much better job than you'd be doing on your own. And I predicted this a year and a half ago that this will be a great opening for liberal arts majors to return to the tech industry. Because liberal arts majors tend to be experts with words and how words represent ideas and knowledge. And so I actually ate my own dog food, and for our software company, I hired a master in fine arts with a degree in short story writing to be our prompt engineer. Everybody thought I was nuts. Of course, that's not the first time that's happened. And it turned out he was great. And so there's a job that did not exist, prompt engineer, 3 years ago. And now there's a huge opening for prompt engineers. And these, this would be a character who would, likely otherwise be working at Starbucks while he's submitting his short stories for publication, probably forever. And now he's, a well-paid technical person doing prompt engineering. So there's a job that has opened up. while
Yeah,
other
and
jobs.
And that prompt engineer, right, he's able to do the work or help do the work of many, many people. It could be something in graphic design, but it could also be accounting or legal. For me, some of the asymmetries are the ones that people didn't expect a long time ago, right? It used to be that they thought AI and the robots were coming for all the blue collar work, but the reality is it's all these attorneys that spend the first 5 years of their career going through every single legal document that a company hands over during discovery, or you're searching through massive Excel databases that can now all be done by AI. And so a lot of these entry level jobs that led to the higher level positions, those are going to get massacred, and the people that made their investments into their careers only to become the median accountant or the median attorney, they're all going to be laid waste to, and they'll have to find something else to do, I think.
Yep. I know a guy who's a founding partner at a mid-sized law firm has like 80 lawyers, and they've historically hired 10 or 12 associates each year. Now they're only hiring 4.
Wow.
And they also select them somewhat differently. They select them preferentially for those who have at least some technical aptitude in addition to their legal aptitude, because they want them to be pushing the edge of what can be done, but also be smart enough to realize what can't yet be done with the software. And and you're right. I think it's going to be a surprise that this round of AI will be replacing the more middle of the road of the white collar work rather than the blue collar work. Now, there'll be another round when we get closer to artificial general intelligence, where things like auto repair even may be amenable to AI. So it'll be more. It will go back after the blue collar jobs again, but for a while it's going to be, as you say, annihilating these mid tier white collar jobs. Customer service. I mean, I've had some horrendous customer service experiences lately talking to supposedly, they are people, I'm quite sure. And my reaction after one of them was, heck, ChatGPT 4 could have done a better job than this person, I guarantee. And I know there's lots of money being spent on the application of it to the customer service jobs. And there's a lot of lower middle jobs in customer service, as you know.
As I think about a world with customer service and my experience of like getting close but always having it be slightly out of your step, I think there's going to be a whole new layer of therapy or psychotherapist to help you deal with the fact that so many of your interactions are not with human beings that are sentient. They're with computers that like you can't reason with, you can't get it to take pity on you. There's no like, oh, they're there, I know you're really struggling with this. And there'll be some emptiness in that conversation, because we're going to train the AI to have this like empathy, right? We're going to train it to be like, oh, thank you for telling me about your challenges. That must really be hard. But you're going to know, and that's going to burn you inside. So I predict the rise of AI therapists helping people cope with the fact that so many of their interactions are with zombies, essentially.
Well, of course, the AI, I didn't even think about that one, but yeah, AI therapy, there's lots of money being spent on that.
Oh, therapy done by the AI.
Done by the AI. So now we go full cycle. Therapy done by the AI to assuage people's angst about dealing with AI.
Okay, so let's crack open the mind of Jim Rutt and say, what are some of the darker scenarios? People talk all the time, hey, we got to be careful. This thing could get out of control. What does out of control look like?
Ooh, I mean, the worst case is really, really bad. As I told you, I was going to go the next move up from AGI. And this, now that we've gotten sort of within spitting distance, or at least gunshot distance of AGI, we realize that's not the top of the stack by any means. Good as a human in almost everything a human could do. The next step is called artificial superintelligence, which is something that's a computer doing work that humans used to do that's now way better than any human has ever been at many of those tasks. And we are, that's where one of the biggest risks, it's in the AI risk field, it's often called the paperclip maximizer risk. What a weird thing to call it, but it's where the things have gotten so smart that they can completely outfox us and do whatever they want and convince us to do what we want. If we try to put them in a security box, that they will be so seductive with their use of language that they'll convince us to let them out of the box. I mean, there's a whole library of scenarios about this.
Well, and the paperclip one is you tell this AI, hey, do what you can to make, paper clips as fast as possible. And this thing now starts taking every single resource that it possibly can to turn it into paper clips. And you're now ripping out sewer lines and smelting the metal and turning those into paper clips and
killing all the
world.
people because they're wasting all this energy that could be used for making paper clips, right? It's a kind of crazy example, but it's like one of the worst case scenarios. And then that goes into two lines. One's called FOOM. I don't know what FOOM stands for. That means super fast takeoff, where once we get to some line of smart enough AI, a bit smarter than humans, suddenly you're at something 1,000 or 1,000,000 times smarter than a human in 2 days. That's called the FOOM theory. And the other is the slow takeoff theory, where it's on a trajectory to get 1,000 times smarter than a human, but it might take 10 years. And again, we don't know. I will say my own work between 2014 and 2018 in cognitive science and cognitive neuroscience has convinced me that human cognition is quite weak. We are just barely a general intelligence, just over the line. So there's a lot of room above human level of intelligence for artificial intelligence to move into. But how quickly it can find it, because it will be the one that's doing the finding, not us. Once we get to, say, 2x human, you give it the instruction, design your successor, and how quickly it can find its better successor will be, I think, a determiner of how quickly the takeoff, how we go from smart, as smart as a human, a bit smarter than a human, and suddenly so smart it's not even in the same, so much smarter than anybody that ever lived, that we're in a completely different realm. And whether that happens quickly or takes years will make a big difference on how this plays out.
As it approaches human intelligence, probably the best talk I've ever heard, maybe ever in any subject at all, was Yosha Bach giving a talk called Computational Metapsychology. I watched this thing 10 years ago, and in it, he goes to describe, like, hey, if we're going to try and get computers to think like human beings, you first have to understand, what do human beings know? And basically, he says human beings know almost nothing at all. We know one or two things really, really deeply, enough that we can create value and get work out of it. And almost everything else that we quote unquote know is really, what does our tribal affiliation say? Because it's better for us to get along with other people than it is for us to have the right answer. And that's the tribal nature. You don't want to get kicked out of the tribe. You want to be a part of it. But humans vastly overestimate how much we know, because so much of what we think of as knowledge is just like what our group believes. So once the computer approaches one single person's intelligence, to me, that the speed with which it will gain actual intelligence and outpace a human is staggering. And it may have some weird blind spots about not having social knowledge, but I think that that doesn't make it any safer. It probably makes it more dangerous.
I was going to say, I've had Yosha Bach on my podcast a few times. They're some of my most popular episodes. So people want to know about what Yosha Bach has to say, check out the Jim Rutt Show. He's an amazing character. I had another podcast very recently with Trent McConaughey. He's another really smart guy I've known for a long time. And what he's proposed is kind of interesting, which he also thinks that these things will take off and be 1,000 times smarter than humans. But his prediction on the way to, or idea on how to tame them, is he wants to accelerate brain-computer interfaces and have the humans and the ASIs essentially merge as cooperative thinkers. And there's a little bit of history that actually shows that might be possible. We mentioned in 1997, I think it was, Deep Blue beat the top chess player.
Yeah.
But for another 20 years, 15 years, they had a series of competitions where you could combine humans plus computers to play chess. And until about 2015, 2016, the combination of humans plus computers was better than just computers. And they could beat the world's top computer chess program by adding a human to the mix. And that thought was kind of interesting. 15 years where it took for the pure software to be better than human plus software. And so that is somewhat supportive of Trent's idea that at least for some period, the artificial superintelligence plus a human tightly wired with, things in your brain to talk to the computer at high speed. Not for me, thank you very much, but some people will no doubt do it, could actually outcompete the ASIs that don't have that aspect. And if so, perhaps that's how we tame the ASIs, because they have some reason to keep us around.
So other scenarios that I think of as dangerous, and if this sparks any ideas in your mind, I'm open to hearing it. But I think that once we start using AI in warfare, which we almost inevitably will, someone will, right? Whether that's
They're already doing it.
Yeah. So tell me about it, because I imagine a drone being told, find what you think is a human and shoot it, right? Or find this human and shoot it.
In Ukraine, they already have called lingering munitions. Which will just fly around till they see something that looks like a tank and then dive on it, right? And you could easily do that. And we know that all the countries are working on the same thing. Take the equivalent of a little ATV, put a machine gun on it, a camera, and say, never, never turn around. As long as you're pointed that way, anything that looks like a human, just shoot it. You could build that right now, no problem. And the other, I was just actually talking to an expert about this yesterday. We expect that the next generation of fighter craft will be one fighter plane with 5 or 6 drone wingmen, and those things will react. They won't be under the direct command of the human piloted plane, other than giving them general direction. They will be making all their own real-time decisions on what to chase in the sky, what to shoot down, etc. And that can't be more than 5 or 6 years away. So AIs in warfare for sure. They may actually be good in some ways because there'll be less humans killed. Let the robots kill each other. Now let's just hope they don't get the idea to go kill the humans. But
and then what's to stop somebody from saying, "Hey, I'm going to fight the other robots, and then once I've conquered them, it will be much easier to subdue a culture because." The number of soldiers I need, or soldiers that are unwilling to do the bidding that I want. This is just a cold machine. I just tell it how to work.
Interestingly, I'm not too concerned about that, particularly in the short term, because that's a variety of narrow AI. It's quite specific. It basically is not deeply intelligent. It just says, if it looks like a human, shoot it, right? It's not making volitional decisions, go hunt down all humans and kill them. It's only when I get a message that for the next 5 minutes I should shoot humans and turn on my human recognizer. There's a human, boom, dead. But it's not going to just on its own volition go around running around Chicago shooting people. It's only going to obey its orders. It'll be actually more reliable than a normal infantryman, because it probably can differentiate at a higher level of precision a civilian from a military person, or a mother with a child from a military guy carrying a duffel bag, because it doesn't panic, it doesn't have trigger finger, and all that. So truthfully, at least the earlier stages of this, I think will actually be just fine. Not a huge risk to humanity. I do have some other nice scary scenarios I could go down though.
By all means.
To my mind, probably the biggest risks from AI in the bundle, right, in the shorter term, the big stuff, paperclip maximizers, real risk, I think 10 years out or more. And we do need to fund research in that. People like Eliezer Yudkowsky and Max Tegmark and a bunch of other folks, Yosha Bach. Well, actually, Yosha doesn't do AI research so much, but risk research. But another one that we're already seeing is what I call bad people doing specific bad things with narrow AI. A good example is China and their surveillance program, where in much of China, everybody's face is constantly being monitored and then analyzed by AI, and then their behavior inferred from the patterns of their movement as they go from one thing to another, and their ethnicity being identified, plus or minus, etc. So they're essentially building a state-of-the-art dictatorship that Stalin or Hitler would have gone, whoa, man, that would have been great. And they're using a bunch of AI in that thing. The other one that we're seeing right now is hyper-personalized advertising. It's crazy. The Facebook or Twitter, especially Facebook, seems to know what you want to see and is giving it to you. And it's going to only get better at an accelerating rate. one I happen to know at least one party is working on, probably both, for the 2024 elections, you will be getting personalized communications that are using large language models and closely related technologies to send you the message that they calculate you personally will most resonate with, and it will be custom crafted for you. And who knows?
I'm totally with you on this. This is the way propaganda is going to go, right? It used to be that if the government had all the money in the world, they could only fill up a building with people that needed to go on bathroom breaks and could only work 8 hours a day, and maybe would get tired of putting out the propaganda. But in this case, you could have just servers filled with the ability to do AI, and you could crank out more propaganda than is comprehensible, and it could be specified to individuals.
Yes, because we, again, for 10 cents, you can buy from a company called Axiom like 150 data points about you. Do you have a hunting license? What kind of car do you drive? A scary amount of stuff about you. You feed that into an LLM that's been trained on a smaller subset of 10,000 people, it'll be able to push all your buttons in a way that you won't even be able to detect. And that is not good. And just like Obama probably won the 2012 election by having superior knowledge of social media, their team was way better than Romney's team on social media. It could be that whichever party happens to master LLM technology best in 2024 will win. And so this branch in the trajectory of history won't be determined by the issues. It'll be determined by who happens to master automated, personalized propaganda better this year, which is not a good thing, I would say. Some other examples, AI scams are taking off. There's been some pretty impressive ones where somebody used a AI to build a fake video and called up somebody to impersonate the CFO and told somebody in his supposed accounting department to wire transfer, I think it was $5 million to some account. And of course it was fraudulent, but it looked and sounded just like the CFO, and the dialogue was reasonably realistic. It was a human behind the scenes. And our family actually now has a safe word that if we suspect a phone call, oh, your daughter's been arrested and needs bail money or something, that there's a code word we have chosen so that we can detect if we suspect a family member is being, imitated by AIs. And I would recommend everybody's family develop that as a habit, as good techno hygiene. And then, of course, there's, this is one they actually try to test things like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Claude. But unfortunately, there's a reason they can't do it really successfully, which is because it knows pretty much everything. It knows how to make bombs. It knows how to make poisons. It knows how to do biohacking in your basement, right? And we have been somewhat fortunate in that a lot of the terrorists that hate the West are not very technical and aren't very capable. But if they get access to LLMs of strong enough power, they'll be able to make very good nerve gas in their basement. They'll be able to biohack the common cold and turn it into Ebola or something, right? So those are some examples of bad people doing specific things, bad things with narrow AI. A couple of the other ones you alerted to, and I think this is one of the biggest ones we're already seeing, and I call the flood of sludge, right? I know a lot of farmers listen to your show. They certainly know what sludge is, and I mean it quite literally, right? That fake websites, you search Google today, 7 out of 8 of the websites in some categories are fake, right? And they look like real websites, but they're just things created by LLMs to sell terrible ads for the most ridiculous products. These will help upregulate conspiracy theories, dis and misinformation. And then here's the thought, because these large language models are trained on what they scrape off the internet, the next generation of large language models will be partially trained on large language model generated sludge. So what is that?
Yeah, it's just going to cause this infinite cycle. A couple weeks ago, I was trying to cook something, so I looked up online a recipe, and we all know those damn recipes that are filled with oh, my grandmother used to make these pickles with the, just this right brine, and it's like just trying to get you to see more ads. Well, this article went on infinitely with just gobbledygook about this recipe, never actually reaching the point where it did ingredients. And like, I don't know, somebody either did that to me on purpose, or but clearly written by AI, because it was just regurgitated thing over and over again. And then once that's in the cycle, depending if that gets sucked up into the next time you're training the GPT-5, now it's got all that bullshit in it.
Exactly. It's the recycled sludge problem. And here to make it even better, if these people are state-of-the-art spammers, they probably generate 100 of these versions of this particular recipe, and the one that sucks people in the longest is the one that they preferentially start connecting to the link, and then they take what they learned from that to do the next generation of fake recipes that'll suck people in, and all that could be fully automated. So our attention is being hijacked. And this then gets to what I believe, after specific people doing specific bad things with AI, one of the biggest risks of all that we don't even think about, I call it epistemic decay. Epistemology is a big 50-cent word. It basically means, how do we know what we know, right? How do we know? How do we know things, right? And if the sludge is all around us and it's incoming at this very rapid rate, our ability to actually think and to know real useful facts becomes undermined. What happens when a whole country or whole civilization has its epistemic sense-making broken down by the flood of sludge and other things? We're in a real world hurt. I sometimes use this example. When I was a kid, say 1965, 1964, the average American adult, 50% of them are high school graduates, and 50% weren't. My parents, one was, one wasn't. So in the neighborhood I grew up in, about the same. Half are high school dropouts, half are high school grads. But they actually were pretty smart about politics and current events and community associations, and we built a community pool. We had the boys club and the girls club, and this was just run by the volunteers. These people were actually very capable of operating in the world. Today, almost everybody is allegedly a high school graduate, and 35 or 40% of them are college grads, and they can't seem to run the world at all, right? It's amazing. And I would say a lot of this is epistemic decay. We no longer know how to separate fact from fiction. We no longer know how to use common sense in putting together a little community-based organization to build a swimming pool. And we are actually worse thinkers with all of our fancy education than, in your case, probably grandparents, in my case, parents, were back in 1965 when half of them were high school dropouts. And so then that's only going to get worse. And
how does AI make that worse?
Well, because it's the flood of sludge, essentially, right? If you're just...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, it's two parts. One is the fact that you're just getting convincing sounding baloney, right? What are the two parties going to do? Are they going to be sending you the actual truth? No. They're going to be sending you spun stuff to make you think their way. So your brain is now full of spun stuff. Secondly, and this is a personal theory with no proof, so I'll just call it a conjecture. I believe that the human brain evolved to be able to handle a certain number of inbound attention requests per day. And that number might be 30 or 40 or 50. And when we start getting overloaded with more and more and more calls on our attention, we are essentially like becoming depleted in our ability to pay attention. I don't know if you've noticed, but every damn website selling something now has a little pop-up trying to get your email address so they can give you a 10% discount on your first order. I've kind of got a mental program now, just click on it without even looking at it, but that is a call upon my attention. And if there's a limit to our ability to process these attention calls, and when you get past it, it depletes the quality of your attention, which I assert that it does, that alone will reduce our epistemic capacity. And I think especially people who horrifyingly do things like leave their notifications on their phone. Do not do that, people, right? Do not take your telephone into your bedroom with you, of all their other horrifying things. People that do those kinds of things, or worst of all, watch TikTok. I actually did that for 4 sessions, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. And I said, whoa, this is the electronic fentanyl. This is perfectly designed.
Yeah, you told me that. I've been using that term for a long time, and it's been probably the only thing that's kept me from that drug, because it fits me perfectly, right? Just give me a little dose of a good conversation. I don't want to have anything on the front side or the back side. Just
Continuous
60
drip,
seconds
slow drip of
that's exactly.
fentanyl. And oh my God.
And you're spinning that thing, and it's like every once in a while it gives you something really good. Maybe it's a beautiful woman, or it's some
amazing dance move, or some really clever
carving
poem.
of wood.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and it seemed to figure out pretty quickly that I liked kind of silly country boy jokes, right? And in my 4 sessions, I probably heard 2 actually good ones, but most of it was crap. But it was done in a way that was hip. As a professional designer of online products, I've been designing online products since 1980. So I have a pretty good taste in how to make them addictive. And I said, I'm retiring my crown. Whoever designed this thing was the king of addictive product design. This should be, anyone who gives this to somebody under 18 should consider themselves a criminal, because they've done something worse than giving cigarettes to kids. This is worse than cigarettes. So parents, if you're letting your kids have TikTok on their phone, you are worse than somebody giving them cigarettes. So be ashamed of yourself and do something about it, right? So epistemic decay is certainly a huge part of the problem. And AI, it's not just AI, of course, our whole information ecosystem, but AI is pumping more stuff, worse stuff that's more attuned to grabbing you and addicting you than previously. And then I'll give you 2 more if we have time.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is I've been doing a lot of work with a group of people called the Game B community. I think we talked about that a little bit.
Oh yeah, my podcast knows all about this. Yeah,
Okay.
You don't even have to explain it.
Oh, great. Well, we think that Game A, i.e., our status quo, is on a going out of business curve, and we had sort of roughly calculated that we had about 60 years to move the world to a better way of living, which we call Game B. It appears that AI is speeding up everything. If it speeds up programming, it speeds up product design, like the NVIDIA stuff. It speeds up, it'll speed up farming at some point even. Let's say it speeds everything up by 50%, instead of 60 years before Game A hits the wall, it'll be 30 years. And, you talked about things like energy consumption. I actually have to look this up for another purpose today. ChatGPT, the training of the current version, used 50 gigawatt hours of electricity, which is a staggering amount of electricity. I also looked up what did a slave cost in 1858, and in equivalent dollars, it's about $500,000, which would say that it's worthwhile. And then also I follow economic development in our region here, and typically when people build factories, they spend about $1 million of capital goods for each one job created. So the amount of electricity that could be afforded to be thrown at a, say, just human level AGI is kind of the economic equivalent of $1 million, or let's call it $100,000 a year of electricity, right? What's that going to do to our fossil fuel demand and to and just think of the amount of land being used for data centers, things of that sort. So.
Yeah, I think that our approach with energy is going to have to radically change, because between AI and things like Bitcoin with proof of work, and I know you and I have a little bit different of opinion on this, but the demands for energy are only going up. And this is an offsetting thing, exactly, that it won't be humans or burning wood, it will be using higher orders of energy, and the only way to be able to keep up will be to make sure that you have enough energy to keep your computers running.
Yeah, and then think about it at the top level of nation-state competition. If we're using more and more AI to do everything to drive our economy, drive our military, drive our entertainment, our world dominance in entertainment, soft power, right? There's going to be a called a multipolar trap or race to the bottom about burning more power to have more AI. And so if we don't get to some massive form of concentrated power that doesn't pollute the atmosphere with carbon, like fusion power or orbiting solar, It could be, again, an acceleration of game A driving off a cliff by inducing us to a level of climate change, which, we hadn't even considered. So that's the speeding up of game A itself, is itself a huge risk. And I think I may be the first person to be pointing this out, that if we assume that game A is self-terminating, whatever period of time we thought we had until it did self-terminate is suddenly gotten shorter with the advent of very broadly distributed AI, which is just beginning today. And it's more than Wright Brothers 1903, but we're not yet up to the World War I biplanes. We're still in the pre-World War I epoch of airplanes in the equivalent. So there's way more to come and to go. And then the final one, and this one I was actually talking about to another expert in the last few days, is all this stuff combined is seriously overrunning our governance capacity. Our government, I would argue, in the United States has not been very well governed since about 1994. Many other governments around the world are showing similar signs. I mean, just think of the clowns that we elect to public office, and the lies that our government takes, the bad decisions that they make, on and on and on. And these are just dealing with the previous generation of problems. With this accelerating rate of the kinds of problems we're talking about, how is our governance apparatus going to deal with this, right? You think the U.S. Senate, are those people going to be able to have anything like informed opinions about how to deal with these problems we just talked about? My answer is heck no. Heck no, they can't deal with the problems from the previous generation of technology. And what's that going to do? I think I can see two branches, one of which is scary, and the other is maybe impossible, which is, I suppose we could give the AGIs the power to make our decisions for us. No, do not do that, human race, right? That's where you really could end up as slaves to the computers if you let them have the authority of government, because they're quicker and not as stupid as a bunch of over-the-hill U.S. senators. And the second, and this is the harder one, this is hard, is could we seriously change our political operating system so that it isn't dominated by over-the-hill folks who don't know anything about what's going on? I've proposed some ideas along those lines, one of them called liquid democracy. You can find it on Medium. Just go to Medium, type in Jim Rutt, liquid democracy. I have an idea of how we can have a better governance system than the one we have now, but it's a long shot that we could actually get that through, get a constitutional amendment and all the things we'd have to do. So the fact that we are now confronting exponentially increasing rates of problems with the same busted old governance structure that we've had for quite a while here, since 1933, basically, that's another one that could just cause us to collapse. So, and it's related to AI, because AI is what's the main cause right now of the rapidly increasing set of stressors that we have to deal with. So plenty of pleasant thoughts for the day, right?
The other day you published an interview with James Lindsay about national divorce, which I thought was really telling. This is something that I've heard about in my own circles, but not heard it talked about in like wider networks. And I would say, having heard it on your podcast in such depth, I would say it is definitely on its way down the well actually graph, right, to wider audiences. And this concept, I think, could easily be accelerated by the conflict that occurs from AI. If you have massive amounts of people turned out of work, they're going to try and join something that gives them meaning and gives them some kind of power or authority. If you start talking about, the government either using AI for propaganda or using it for surveillance that starts going outside of the bounds of things, I think that concept of national divorce will be much more palatable to people than, let's try and go in and get all the states to work together and maybe we can elect some people in, and over the next 2 generations, we'll try and solve this problem. I don't sense that our culture is there. And so I would recommend to my audience, this is a fascinating conversation between you and James Lindsay. One that, I actually have thought quite a bit about. It's actually stopped me from sharing it because I thought, hey, this is one of those concepts, national divorce, that you're going to get on a radar about somebody talking about it, and you're never going to go off that list. So I thought bravo to you and James for talking about it.
Yeah, in my circles, we've been talking about it for a couple of years, and so it was quite interesting. And James wrote this very good essay, which I disagree with in part, as listeners will hear. But I think it is time for people to put that on their agenda, and maybe it's a solution, maybe it's not, but it's at least something we have to consider. If it's basically impractical to overhaul our current governance at this 330 million people level, maybe we're better off with countries of 30 million, where we can create a form of governance based on higher levels of trust, higher levels of coherence that can actually get something done, rather than a set of creaky apparatus which was not designed for the current pace of the world, that has to somehow consolidate the views of California and Alabama to get anything done. We shall see.
This is something I think you and I view a little bit differently, but in the context of AI, I'd be interested in your thoughts on it, which is Bitcoin, because I think that one of the things that AI will be able to do will be to massively expand the hacking that can go into the financial system, whether that's doing password hacking on the bank's websites, or the ability to do kind of phishing attacks will go way up, or even the personal ones, right? The AI being able to impersonate a voice of a bank president saying, hey, I want you to wire this money from here to there. Whereas Bitcoin, I think once something's in cold storage, I would put my AI up against any bank's website login system any day of the week. What are your thoughts on that? Does that improve your outlook for Bitcoin?
Hell no, not Bitcoin. That's the stupidest idea ever. No, it's actually a brilliant idea. I read Satoshi's paper a few months after he wrote it, and I go, why didn't I think of that? Right? It's it's not that hard, but it's brilliant. So it really is brilliant. Just a stupid idea to have a currency based on Bitcoin. Really extra 10 times stupid. And I will say, just for I actually have more current context right now than I have had in a while. Some of my altcoins went on a big run over the last few months, and so I was selling a bit over the last couple of weeks. And it reminded me how amazingly fragile all the infrastructure is to hold and transact coins. You have to know where your private key is, right? But you have to make sure nobody else knows where your private key is. And you have to figure out a exchange that you're allowed to be a member of that will allow you to transact the coins that you have. And well, it turned out one of the coins that I really wanted to unload cannot be, the exchanges that trade it will not accept U.S. customers. And so I had to wire up some swaps on Uniswap, right? And of course, then they hose you with like 2% commissions and screw you on the trading spread. It was costing me about 3% to transact them. And I go, Jesus, what kind of person would design a system like this, right? It's like,
well, those are shit coins. Those systems are shit, and they're going to leak money out so that the people that posted them can steal from them, which is why I'm strongly believe that Bitcoin is not like those altcoins.
Yeah. No, these are both these altcoins that I hold in fair numbers of are real projects that are doing real work in the world, and they're valuable. There's a reason they've run up 10x over the last couple of years. And we'll probably go. And that's why I'm only selling a bit, is because I think they got a ways to go with some ups and downs. Unlike Bitcoin, which has no known use case except for a bad one, which is to be a sterile store of value. We do not want our society's savings. Well, this is actually a good. This will be good. I actually had prepared this for talk about AI risk, but I will repurpose it to denounce Bitcoin, which is. Thanks for the opportunity, Vance. Right.
I'm loving this. Go for it. Shoot.
Vance is one of my very favorite podcast hosts. So I'm just, punching him in the nose just because I can, right? And he'll take it in more or less good humor, and then he'll punch back, and that'll be fun. So anyway, an economy consists of basically 6 things: production, distribution, consumption, savings, investment, and innovation. And it's essentially a cycle that has to keep running. And the key ones about Bitcoin are savings, which means that which our society does not consume of our effort becomes our savings in the next cycle to either do maintenance on our infrastructure or to build new things or do research to then do new things. And the savings of the world ought to be invested in productive things, in companies, in research, etc. And what should not be done is put into sterile savings. Money in a checking account, for instance. Now, fortunately, banks have ways to recycle money, so something good comes out of money in the checking account. Okay.
In your argument there, Jim, you had some oughts that I don't know that I would just naturally agree with. The first one being that, like, what we ought to do with the money that we're saving, right? So money is actually delineating what is the value of work or something that you created that people will give you for that. And we use money so that way we don't have to trade. We don't have that, hey, I want potatoes and you only have apples. How can we do this? Well, let's use money. But the difference in your analogy between Bitcoin as $100 bills being stuffed in your mattress and Bitcoin is, with Bitcoin, there are and will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, whereas the $100 bills, there is an infinite number of them that will be printed. They just keep getting printed. So the value of holding dollar bills goes down because each one of there's more of them going after the same number of goods. Whereas with the Bitcoin, if you take it out of the fiat system and you put it into Bitcoin, you're now saying, I want to hold this value and I'll use it at some point in the future. Right now, our system is set up that we are forcing people to take the value that they've earned through work, and we're saying, don't put it in a savings account because we're going to burn it away through inflation so fast that you should instead be investing it into the stock market. You should be buying bonds. You should be doing these various activities that put your money at risk. And that risk is something that we've now taken on as a natural part of human existence. But the reality is we should be able to safely store that which we have created without having it inflated away.
There's so many false parts of that argument. I'm going to say that the disincentive to save money in checking accounts is a feature, not a bug, for the reason I alluded to before, which is it is only diminishing the productive capacity of our society to think you can store economy. You can't, right? The economy produces what it produces, and that's all that it does. If you had, let's say for a year, nobody invested anything in doing anything, put it all in Bitcoin, and then a year later they take all the Bitcoin out and are going to make investments with it. Guess what? The prices of all the investments will be way, way, way high because the investable economy is very finite and doesn't grow that fast. And so this idea of storing investment is actually fallacious, as it turns out. And so any system
Wait, but why? Why is it? Why is it? Like, I don't understand why anyone would advocate for a system that they cannot pull value out and say, when I'm ready to invest, when there is a product that I particularly believe in, when the economy is at a part of the cycle that I think that my investment would be the most valuable. But instead, we have a system that's set up that so disincentivizes it that it forces people to essentially gamble with their money.
Well, of course, you always have to gamble. That's my point. You always have to gamble with your money. There is no such thing as a safe store. Just think about what investment actually means. It's that you're investing in somebody building a new factory, somebody buying fertilizer for their farm. There's a million things that savings are used for. But it's a relatively finite amount at any given time. There's not you can't massively say we need 3 times as much investment this year, so everything comes flying out of Bitcoin and everybody invests. If you do that, it would the price of the investable opportunities at every given point in time are only very slowly growing. So this idea of storing the ability to invest is fallacious, at least on average. You're not going to change the amount of investment significantly, but from one year to the next or 1 month to the next. There's only so much investment that the world can usefully absorb in each epoch. And so, and this is where Bitcoin is worse than $100 bills because of this finite number of tokens that will ever be issued. People have convinced themselves that the price can only go up. So it's a self-fueled bubble. Because they say, oh, there's only 22 billion, whatever the fuck it is, and it's the only ones that are going to be there. Of course, it's going to go up, and as long as there's a collective hallucination that that's true, it will. But when people realize that this is not what we need in a monetary system, the exact opposite of what we need in a monetary system, eventually people are going to all dump Bitcoin and say this is absurd and ridiculous, and start doing what they're supposed to be doing with their surplus, which is investing it into the productive aspects of the economy and a small amount of cash, so that you can jump on very short-term opportunities.
I think that I would push back and say, I think one of the reasons that we see such a huge boom and bust cycle in our economy, right, where you have these massive bubbles that get built up and then they explode, is because people are looking for places where they can store their money and they can at least ensure that the value of what it could purchase today will be the same tomorrow. Let's not even just say going up, just save it for tomorrow. So people then say, the best store of my wealth is in real estate. So I'm just going to keep buying real estate, and the prices of those things go up to the point where their ability to be sold into the market is taken away. There's so many less people that can buy property if the wealthy people are buying multiple pieces of property. And the reason that they're doing that is because if they don't buy something as an investment, it's going to be inflated away. I think the real trick that people are going to be shocked about is that there's no end to the amount that the government is going to inflate our money. There's nothing you can do about it, and it's always sucking money right out of your pocket. And it's more than just the imagined 2.5 or 3% that we've had of inflation for years, but instead it's 6%, 9%. In many countries, it's 20%, 50, 100%. This allows people to get out from that storm.
Yeah, actually, I think it will actually make it worse, because if people come out of the economy and, things are bad, I must still store everything in Bitcoin, and then when they try to come back in and invest, it's going to have this problem that the amount of investable opportunities doesn't change. But if the flux of funds looking to invest suddenly spikes up, then the price of investable opportunities will spike up.
But right now, the alternative, what we have right now, is wizards that come down from their magical meetings and they say, we're going to make the cost of money go up, or we're going to make it go down. And this is how we're running our entire economy, that we have a board of governors that gets to decide how much should money cost. And
so don't invest your money in money, right? And in fact, if you look at the long haul, investing your money in money is not smart. Invest your money in productive assets. Buy land, buy farmland and rent it out. Buy stocks and bonds, stocks as opposed to bonds. Invest in startups. And if you're a small guy, you only got $10,000, buy the Vanguard All Stocks Mutual Fund. There's hardly any fees associated with it, and over the long haul, you will make 8% on your money. Way more than you'll make in government bonds or something like that. And I'll tell you this, as a sort of rich guy myself, rich enough, right? I generally have 1% of my money in cash. All the rest is invested in assets, commodities, private equity. Fairly good in natural gas pipelines. Turned out to be a great business, right? They're like a toll. They're like owning a toll road. The people that send the natural gas over the pipelines, they pay you every time they send natural gas, and I get some coins. I know several of these collections of natural gas called MLPs. It's called multiple limited partnerships. Thing. But anyway, so put your money in actual
master
real
limited partnerships.
Master limited partnerships, MLPs. That's it. That's a real good one. That's tax advantaged, up the yin yang. It's great. So put your money into real stuff. Don't put it into money, because money will indeed evaporate. Maybe at best you could hold it even if you're smart on how you structure your bond portfolios. But in general, the superior way is to put your money into productive assets. And you will be better rewarded, and the economy will have more energy to build more productive assets. As I say, Bitcoin is at best as good as putting it in a mattress for the economy, and it's probably worse because, as you point out, putting it in the mattress, at least there's a disincentive to do that based on inflation. Bitcoin makes people at least think they might be able to beat that curve, and so Bitcoin, very, very bad.
Oh, Jim, I think we are going to watch this play out, and one of us will be really right, and one of us will be really wrong. So,
And of course, like
this has
everything
been-
investments, it's all about timing. You could well be right for another 10 years.
This has been a fantastic conversation. If people found what you were saying about liquid democracy, the future of AI, Plan B, Game B, where should people go?
Shoo, lots of different places. You want to start for Game B, check out gameb.wiki, because it's a little old, but there's some good stuff there. And also a paper I wrote called A Journey to Game B on Medium. That may be the best place to start, 15-page paper, lays out a whole bunch of aspects on it. The future of AI, of course, the whole world is awash in that right now. It's hard to pick out one source that's better than any other. In terms of liquid democracy, an introduction to liquid democracy by Jim Rutt. Just type that in, and you'll get a very easy, with lots of cartoons and drawings, explanation of a better governance system. So there's just some places to start.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, and I will add, you can cut this off if you want, but that we're going to do another podcast tomorrow. We're going to go into considerably deeper detail on AI risks. And so those who want to move from the undergraduate to the graduate level of talking about AI risk, check out Jim Rutt Show with Vance.
Yeah, that'll be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it. So I'll be guest hosting your show, and I'll definitely share it out. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah, all right.